Hi, Andrew from SACS, and welcome to video number 10 in our 11 video series on creating the optimum corporate culture. This is all about leadership of corporate culture, and we're going to show you some research about showing how important leadership is to create an optimum corporate culture, but also what style of leadership can do that. Firstly, some research findings. Leadership is critical to culture, so you see this meta-analysis of 17,000 odd people. Leadership was found to have a medium-level positive effect on organisational culture. So to translate that into English, what it means is that good leadership makes a big difference to corporate culture and bad leadership makes a big difference in a negative sense. Now that probably doesn't surprise you, and in a few slides we're going to tell you exactly how to do this. Leadership influences organisational performance with culture partially mediating this relationship. What that means is that leaders can have a big impact on the performance of an organisation. The corporate culture that they create is a really important ingredient in that. And in particular, you'll see that at the bottom of this slide, we talk about transformational leadership. So what is transformational leadership? Positive leadership in a contemporary sense has been shown to have a number of really crucial components that cause a form of leadership which will create a highly engaged workforce, but as well as that, create inclusion and create a sense of purpose, wanting to belong to the organisation. The key components are these: purpose-driven, leads by example, ethical, articulates a vision, defines goals, motivates, inspires, optimistic, innovative, encourages creativity and learning, and kind, supportive, encouraging, and empowering. So leadership is sort of a mixture of accountability and of kindness and supportiveness of staff. Again, perhaps not massively surprising, but very strongly backed out by the evidence. Now, going back about 5 years ago, SACS undertook a big project in partnership with Deakin University where we measured leadership behaviours that were causing staff to be highly engaged in their work. And it really shows, from a purely scientific point of view, the relationship between what we have come to call facilitative leadership, where leaders lead like facilitators rather than bosses, and how that relates to this concept called transformational leadership. And so we measured these 10 leadership behaviours. We measured many more, but 10 of them proved to be statistically significant. You see, the first 4 are explicitly mentioned in transformational leadership: causing people to learn, being supportive of them, fostering teamwork, empowering them. So those are all things about creating a learning environment, creating a positive psychosocial environment where people can feel safe, comfortable, and enthusiastic about their work. The next section, though, is about accountability, creating clarity of appropriate behaviours, effective management of behaviours. The reason that there are 2 sections there: people can create clarity about necessary behaviours, but sometimes not do anything about it, or vice versa. There are cases where people are very keen to correct people's behaviours, but they haven't really created the clarity. Good accountability is about both, isn't it? It's about creating clarity and then about doing something about it if the person doesn't come up to whatever standard is expected. And the next bit is about performance, and so creating clarity about performance standards and effective management of underperformance. So once more, you have this clarity question, and then you have the question of doing something about it if the person is not meeting standards. And the final 2 are about celebrating success and optimism and positivity. So what that means is that leaders need to be optimistic, positive, and future-focused, and they need to focus on positive things like, for instance, successes. So we measured over 3,000 people's levels of engagement using a validated engagement measurement tool, and we measured these 10 behaviours from what they were seeing in their own workplaces. And what we discovered is that there were 4 of these behaviours that proved to be very important. The most important to cause a highly engaged workforce was empowerment. The second was optimism and positivity. The third was being supportive. And the fourth was creating a learning environment. So those 4 were crucial for creating an environment where people felt safe, optimistic, positive, and energised. Now, that doesn't mean the accountability stuff is not important. Accountability is very important for the well-being of colleagues, but also for the productivity and success of the organisation. But it's really interesting to see those 4 characteristics: empowerment, optimism, supportive leadership, and creates a learning environment, really core to the concept of transformational leadership. So leaders can lead in a range of different ways. They can lead as a boss, or they can lead as somebody who asks the opinion of their staff and then decides themselves what needs to be done, or they can lead as facilitative leaders. You see this diagram which shows three models of leadership. Model number one is top-down, where a leader is telling an individual or perhaps multiple staff what to do. Consultation is where the leader asks people their opinion but then makes up their own mind. So the leader is the blue person in the middle there. And facilitative leadership is a completely different thing. The facilitative leader doesn't come to the staff with a solution. The facilitative leader comes to the staff with a challenge or an opportunity, and then works with the staff to create solutions from within. It's a democratic process. So facilitative leadership is something that's used to deal with issues that are particularly complex, to deal with issues where high levels of engagement are important, and fundamentally what you're doing. And in fact, in this diagram, you see that there's 10 people, and they've been split into two subgroups of 3 and one subgroup of 4. And what you're doing in this process is that you're working with them to cause those subgroups to come up with ideas about how this opportunity should be pursued or this challenge should be overcome. And then what you're doing is you're causing them to vote for the solution. Now, the facilitative leader doesn't bring the solution at all. They bring a process, this facilitation process. And once the vote is taken and it's clear that the majority believes that X should be done, and X could be more than one thing, it might be X, Y, and Z needs to be done, then the job of the facilitative leader, once having done that, is to support that solution. And of course, because this is empowering and because it's optimistic and because it's supportive and because it brings people together in a teamwork sense, of course it's very motivating. This is the single most powerful means of leadership for creating an engaged workforce. So good leaders have to have the capability to lead in Model 1 style, Model 2 style, and Model 3 style, and they also have to be skilled at deciding when to do it. So if you have leaders that are skilled up to do those three things and to make good choices about when to do them, that's kind of optimum for a creation of corporate culture. You will create a workforce that's highly engaged, but as well as that, you will sponsor innovation and creativity. So people aren't just sitting there waiting for the boss to solve their problems. They're actually coming up with solutions of their own, and they're showing initiative, which is exactly what everybody says they want. So to optimize a corporate culture, what you need is leaders who are skilled up in those three models of leadership, and in fact, most aren't. Most leaders oscillate between Model 1, top-down leadership, and Model 2, asking people their opinion, but then making up their own mind. And so if you want to optimize your corporate culture, maybe what has to happen is that staff need to be led by somebody who is skilled in facilitative leadership, where they don't bring the solution, they bring a process and support the staff for their solution. So the last video in our sequence is about leadership development. So I've said that leaders need to be optimally skilled in deciding when to be the boss and when to be a facilitator and when to consult people. But how do you do that? In the next video, we'll deal very specifically with the question of identifying whether people are facilitative leaders or top-down in their dominant style, but also how to develop them. So if this content is of use to you, don't hesitate to like and subscribe.